The words hit me like a physical blow, echoing in the sterile silence of their perfectly manicured living room. "You should stay out of our lives, Eleanor," Mark said, his voice cold, devoid of the warmth I once knew. My own daughter Sarah stood beside him, her eyes downcast, a silent accomplice to this cruel pronouncement. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day that should have been filled with the laughter of grandchildren, the aroma of freshly baked cookies, and the comforting hum of family. Instead, it was a day etched into my memory as the moment my world fractured. I remember the way the sunlight streamed through the large bay window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. My hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as I clutched my worn handbag. I had come with a small gift for my granddaughter Lily, a hand-knitted scarf, a labor of love during lonely evenings. Now it felt like a burden, a symbol of my unwanted presence. "Mark," I began, my voice a fragile whisper. "What are you talking about? I just want to see my grandchildren." My heart ached, a dull, persistent throb. Lily and Tom, my precious grandchildren, were the anchors of my existence since my husband Arthur passed away 2 years ago. They were the reason I woke up each morning, the joy that punctuated the quiet solitude of my days. Mark scoffed, a dismissive sound that grated on my nerves. "You've been interfering, Eleanor, constantly. Sarah and I have discussed it. We need space. We need to raise our children our way without your influence." He emphasized the word influence as if it were a contagion. Sarah remained silent, her silence louder than any accusation. It was a betrayal, a wound deeper than Mark's harsh words. My own flesh and blood, standing by as I was cast out. I looked at Sarah, pleading with my eyes for some sign of the daughter I had raised, the girl who used to run to me with every scraped knee and every triumph. But her face was a mask, unreadable, distant. It was as if a chasm had opened between us, wide and unbridgeable. The pain was excruciating, a sharp tearing sensation in my chest. I had dedicated my life to her, sacrificed so much, only to be deemed an interference. "Interfering?" I repeated, my voice gaining a tremor. "I just offered advice, I just wanted to help." My attempts to offer wisdom, born from years of experience, were now seen as meddling. My concern for their well-being, my desire to be a part of my grandchildren's lives, twisted into something sinister. Mark stepped forward, his posture rigid, his jaw clenched. "We don't need your help, Eleanor. We don't need your advice. We need you to respect our boundaries. And those boundaries mean you need to step back, far back." His gaze was unwavering, cold, like a judge delivering a verdict. My mind raced, trying to comprehend the suddenness and severity of their decision. Had I said something wrong? Done something unforgivable? I replayed recent conversations, searching for a misstep, a transgression that warranted such a drastic measure. All I could recall were gentle suggestions about Lily's cough, a comment about Tom's picky eating, an offer to babysit so they could have a night out. Were these truly grounds for banishment? The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. My vision blurred slightly, and I had to grip the armrest of the sofa to steady myself. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was an eviction from their lives, from my grandchildren's lives. The thought was unbearable. My grandchildren, my sweet Lily with her bright, curious eyes, and my boisterous Tom, full of boundless energy. The thought of not seeing them, not hearing their laughter, not being able to hold them was a torment. "So that's it?" I finally managed to say, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "You're cutting me off from my own grandchildren?" Mark nodded, a curt, decisive movement. "It's for the best, Eleanor. For everyone." He spoke with such conviction, as if he truly believed this was a benevolent act. Sarah still said nothing, her silence a heavy weight pressing down on me. It was a silence that spoke volumes, confirming her complicity, her agreement with her husband's decree. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling like lead. The hand-knitted scarf slipped from my grasp, falling silently to the plush carpet. It lay there, a splash of color against the muted tones of their decor, a poignant reminder of my futile efforts to connect. I looked at it, then back at them, a profound sense of despair settling over me. This was not the family I had nurtured, not the daughter I had raised. This was a cold, unfamiliar landscape. As I turned to leave, a single tear escaped my eye, tracing a path down my cheek. It was a tear of sorrow, of anger, of utter disbelief. I walked towards the door, each step heavy, as if I were carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. The air in the room felt thin, suffocating. I needed to escape, to breathe. "Goodbye, Eleanor," Mark said, his voice softer now, almost a formality, as if he were dismissing a stranger. Sarah still didn't look up. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing my fate, leaving me standing on their porch alone under the indifferent gaze of the afternoon sun. My heart was shattered, but a tiny ember of defiance began to glow amidst the ruins. This couldn't be the end. It couldn't. The drive home was a blur. The familiar streets, the vibrant autumn leaves, the bustling shops, they all seemed to mock my inner turmoil. My mind replayed Mark's words, Sarah's silence, the image of the dropped scarf. Each memory was a fresh stab of pain. When I finally pulled into my driveway, my small, quiet house felt emptier than ever. The silence inside was deafening, amplifying the ache in my soul. I walked through the rooms, touching familiar objects. Arthur's armchair, the photo album on the coffee table, the small ceramic bird Sarah had made for me in kindergarten. Each item whispered of a past that felt irrevocably lost. I sank onto the sofa, the same one where Arthur and I had spent countless evenings dreaming of our future, of grandchildren. Now that future was being snatched away. The tears came then, hot and relentless, a torrent of grief and frustration. I cried for the loss of my grandchildren, for the fractured relationship with my daughter, for the unfairness of it all. I cried until my eyes were swollen and my throat was raw. But amidst the despair, a flicker of something else began to ignite. Anger. How dare they? How dare Mark, a man who had married into my family, dictate my relationship with my own daughter and grandchildren? How dare Sarah, my own child, stand by and allow it? This wasn't just about boundaries. It was about control, about erasing me from their narrative. The next few days were a haze of sorrow and simmering resentment. I tried calling Sarah, but my calls went straight to voicemail. I sent texts, heartfelt and pleading, but received no reply. It was as if I had ceased to exist for them. The silence from their end was a deliberate, cruel punishment. I felt isolated, adrift. My friends tried to comfort me, but their words felt hollow. How could they understand the pain of being cut off from your own blood? One evening, as I sat staring at the flickering television, a commercial for a legal firm popped up. "Family disputes? We can help." The words resonated with a strange intensity. A lawyer? The thought had never crossed my mind. My first instinct was to recoil. Legal action against my own daughter? It felt wrong, unnatural. But then, another thought surfaced. What other options did I have? Begging, pleading. They had made it clear that my pleas were unwelcome. The idea, initially unsettling, began to take root. What if there was a way to fight for my right to see Lily and Tom? What if there was a legal avenue to protect my bond with them? The thought was terrifying, but also empowering. It was a desperate measure, born of desperation, but it was a measure nonetheless. The next morning I found myself in the office of Ms. Evelyn Reed, a family law attorney known for her compassionate yet firm approach. Her office was surprisingly warm, filled with natural light and the scent of old books. Evelyn herself was a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I poured out my story, the words tumbling out in a rush, punctuated by sniffles and pauses. I told her about Arthur, about raising Sarah, about my joy in being a grandmother, and finally about Mark's cruel ultimatum and Sarah's heartbreaking silence. Evelyn listened patiently, nodding occasionally, her expression thoughtful. When I finished, she leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Eleanor," she said, her voice calm and reassuring, "what you're experiencing is incredibly painful, and unfortunately, not uncommon. Grandparental rights are a complex area of law and they vary significantly by state." My heart sank. "So, there's nothing I can do?" "Not necessarily," she replied, a faint smile touching her lips. "While parents generally have the right to raise their children as they see fit, many states recognize that grandparents play a vital role in a child's life. If a significant relationship exists, and if denying access would be detrimental to the child's well-being, courts can sometimes intervene." She explained the legal nuances, the hurdles, the potential for a long and emotionally draining battle. She didn't sugarcoat it, but she also offered a glimmer of hope. "The first step," she advised, "is often a formal letter. It's a way to open a dialogue, to state your intentions clearly, and to show them you're serious about maintaining your relationship with your grandchildren. It often prompts a response, even if it's not the one you hope for. A formal letter." The idea felt both intimidating and strangely liberating. It was a way to reclaim some agency, to transform my passive suffering into active pursuit. I wasn't just Eleanor, the heartbroken grandmother. I was Eleanor, the grandmother who was willing to fight. We discussed the contents of the letter. It needed to be firm but not aggressive, stating my desire for continued contact, outlining my history with Lily and Tom, and expressing my concern for their well-being. It also needed to convey the legal implications of denying access, subtly hinting at the possibility of further action if necessary. Evelyn drafted it with precision, each word carefully chosen to convey strength without hostility. As I left Evelyn's office, a sense of purpose, however fragile, had replaced the suffocating despair. It wasn't a guarantee of success, but it was a step. It was a declaration that I wouldn't simply fade away. I wouldn't let them erase me. I was Eleanor, and I was fighting for my family. The letter, once a mere piece of paper, now felt like a shield, a weapon and a beacon of hope all rolled into one. I knew this path would be difficult, fraught with emotional challenges, but the thought of Lily and Tom, their innocent faces, their joyful laughter, fueled my resolve. I would do whatever it took. The letter was sent via certified mail, a small official envelope carrying the weight of my hopes and fears. The waiting was agonizing. Every time the phone rang, my heart leaped. Every time the doorbell chimed, I rushed to the window. Days turned into a week, then two, with no response. The silence was more unsettling than any angry outburst. It felt like a deliberate act of dismissal, a confirmation of their unwavering resolve to keep me out. My resolve, however, was hardening. The initial pain was slowly morphing into a steely determination. I spent hours researching grandparental rights, reading articles and joining online support groups. I learned about other grandparents who had faced similar battles, some successful, some not. Their stories fueled my fire, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. I was no longer just a grieving grandmother. I was a warrior, albeit an reluctant one, fighting for what I believed was right. Then, one afternoon, my phone finally rang. It was Sarah. My breath hitched. I answered, my voice trembling slightly. "Sarah? Mom," she said, her voice tight, strained. "What is this? This letter?" Her tone was accusatory, laced with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "It's from my lawyer, Sarah," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about seeing Lily and Tom." There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath on her end. Then, Mark's voice, loud and clear, boomed from the background. "What letter? What lawyer?" He must have been listening in, or perhaps he had just walked into the room. "It's for you, Mark," Sarah said, her voice now barely above a whisper, clearly intimidated. "From Mom's lawyer." A moment of stunned silence. Then Mark's voice, rising in volume, filled the phone. "Eleanor, what the hell is this? Are you threatening us? Are you actually trying to sue your own daughter?" His anger was palpable, radiating through the phone line. "I'm not threatening anyone, Mark," I said, my voice gaining strength, fueled by a surge of adrenaline. "I'm simply asserting my right to see my grandchildren. You've cut me off completely. What else was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to respect our wishes," he roared. "You were supposed to understand that we need space." "This is insane, Eleanor. This is a declaration of war." "War?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You declared war on me when you told me to stay out of your lives. You declared war when you cut me off from Lily and Tom. All I want is to be a grandmother to them." Sarah interjected, her voice small and pleading. "Mom, please don't do this. This is going to ruin everything." "Ruin what, Sarah?" I shot back, the pain in my voice evident. "What's left to ruin? You've already pushed me away, you've already broken my heart. All I'm asking for is a chance to be in their lives, even if it's on your terms. But you won't even give me that." Mark took over again, his voice laced with venom. "You think a lawyer's letter is going to scare us, Eleanor? You think we're just going to roll over? You have no idea what you're getting into." "Maybe I do, Mark," I said, my voice surprisingly calm now. "Maybe I have everything to lose, but I also have everything to gain. My grandchildren are worth fighting for." The conversation ended abruptly with Mark hanging up. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. My hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from a strange mix of relief and exhilaration. I had stood my ground. I had spoken my truth. The battle had officially begun. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal consultations, gathering documents and recounting painful memories to Evelyn. She was a rock, guiding me through the complexities, preparing me for the emotional toll ahead. We compiled evidence of my long-standing relationship with Lily and Tom, photos, cards they had made for me, records of gifts, even a journal where I had meticulously documented their milestones. It felt strange, almost clinical, to quantify love and connection, but it was necessary. Meanwhile, the tension between Sarah and me escalated. She sent angry texts, accusing me of being selfish, manipulative, and trying to destroy her family. I responded with calm, measured messages, reiterating my love for her and my grandchildren, and my desire for reconciliation, but also my unwavering commitment to seeing Lily and Tom. It was a delicate dance, trying to convey strength without alienating her completely. I knew that beneath her anger, there was likely fear and confusion, perhaps even a lingering sense of guilt. Mark, on the other hand, remained overtly hostile. He refused to speak to me directly, communicating only through Sarah or through his own lawyer, who sent a terse letter dismissing my claims and reiterating their right to parental autonomy. It was clear he saw this as a power struggle, and he was determined to win. The thought of facing them in court, of having our family's private pain aired in a public forum, was daunting. But the image of Lily's bright smile, of Tom's enthusiastic hugs, kept me going. They were innocent in all of this, caught in the crossfire of adult conflict. I had to be their voice, their advocate. I had to fight for their right to have a grandmother who loved them unconditionally. The tension was building, a storm gathering on the horizon, and I knew the climax was fast approaching. The day of the mediation arrived, a crisp autumn morning that felt strangely out of sync with the turmoil in my heart. I walked into the neutral conference room, Evelyn by my side, my stomach churning with a mix of anxiety and resolve. Mark and Sarah were already there, seated at the opposite end of the long table. Mark's face was a thundercloud, his arms crossed defensively. Sarah looked pale and drawn, her eyes avoiding mine. The air was thick with unspoken accusations and years of simmering resentment. The mediator, a calm, elderly woman with a gentle voice, began by explaining the process. This wasn't a courtroom, she emphasized, but an opportunity to find common ground, to avoid the protracted and painful legal battle that lay ahead if we couldn't reach an agreement. We each presented our case. Evelyn, with her quiet authority, laid out my history with Lily and Tom, emphasizing the deep bond we shared, the emotional support I provided, and the sudden, unexplained cutoff. She spoke of the legal precedents, the importance of a child's relationship with their grandparents, and the potential harm of severing such ties. Then it was Mark's turn. He spoke with a righteous indignation, painting me as an overbearing, intrusive mother-in-law who constantly undermined their parenting decisions. He listed instances, some exaggerated, some completely fabricated, of my supposed interference. Sarah, prompted by a glance from Mark, reluctantly corroborated some of his claims, her voice barely audible. It was painful to hear, a distorted reflection of my intentions. I felt a surge of anger, but Evelyn's hand on my arm was a silent reminder to remain calm. As Mark spoke, I watched Sarah. There was a flicker in her eyes, a fleeting moment of discomfort, as if she were struggling with the narrative Mark was weaving. It was a tiny crack in her facade, but I saw it. It gave me a sliver of hope. The mediator then turned to me. "Eleanor," she said, "what is it you truly want?" I took a deep breath, my voice clear and steady. "I want to be a grandmother to Lily and Tom. I want to be able to see them, to spend time with them, to be a part of their lives. I don't want to interfere with their parenting. I just want to love my grandchildren." I looked directly at Sarah, my gaze unwavering. "Sarah, you know how much I love you, and you know how much I love Lily and Tom. This isn't about control. It's about family. It's about them." My words seemed to hang in the air, piercing the tension. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Sarah, for the first time, met my gaze. Her eyes were filled with a complex mix of emotions, sadness, regret, perhaps even a hint of longing. The mediator then proposed a compromise, a structured visitation schedule supervised if necessary to rebuild trust. Mark immediately rejected it, reiterating his stance that I was a negative influence. "We've tried, mediator," he said, his voice dismissive. "She just doesn't get it. We need her out of our lives." It was at this moment, as Mark was mid-sentence, that Evelyn calmly reached into her briefcase. She pulled out a single sheet of paper, folded neatly, and slid it across the table towards Mark. It wasn't the original letter, but a copy of something far more significant. "Mark," Evelyn said, her voice quiet but firm, "before you dismiss Eleanor's intentions entirely, I believe you should review this." Mark frowned, picking up the paper. As he unfolded it, his eyes scanned the contents. His face, initially defiant, began to change. His jaw slackened, his eyes widened, and a look of utter shock, then dawning horror spread across his features. He went pale, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the paper. Sarah, seeing his reaction, leaned over, her brow furrowed with concern. "Mark, what is it?" He didn't answer, his gaze fixed on the document. His breathing became shallow, ragged. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. It was the first time I had seen him truly rattled. The document was not a new legal threat. It was a copy of Arthur's will, specifically, the clause that outlined the trust fund he had established for Lily and Tom's education. A trust fund that was contingent upon Eleanor maintaining a consistent, loving relationship with her grandchildren, as determined by an independent trustee. If that relationship was severed without just cause, the funds would be redirected to a charitable foundation. Arthur, in his quiet wisdom, had foreseen the possibility of such a conflict and had put safeguards in place, not to control, but to protect his grandchildren's future and ensure my continued presence in their lives. Mark had always been financially ambitious, and the thought of losing a substantial sum of money, especially one earmarked for his children's future, hit him harder than any legal threat. The revelation hung in the air, a silent bomb detonating in the room. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She hadn't known about this clause. Arthur had kept it private, a quiet testament to his foresight and his love for his family. The mediator, sensing the shift in dynamics, looked at Mark expectantly. "Mr. Thompson, is there something in that document that changes your perspective?" Mark swallowed hard, his bravado completely deflated. He looked from the document to Sarah, then back to me, a desperate, calculating look in his eyes. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The game had changed. The silence that followed Mark's discovery of Arthur's will was deafening, broken only by the rustle of the paper in his trembling hand. His face, previously a mask of defiance, was now a canvas of shock and dawning realization. Sarah looked at him, then at me, a flicker of understanding, perhaps even anger, crossing her features. She hadn't known about the trust, about her father's quiet foresight. It was a revelation that exposed Mark's true motivations, stripping away his carefully constructed narrative of my interference. The mediator, ever astute, broke the tension. "Mr. Thompson," she said gently, "it seems this information has altered the landscape of our discussion. Perhaps we should take a short break to allow everyone to process this." Mark, still reeling, could only nod mutely. As he and Sarah retreated to a separate room with their lawyer, Evelyn turned to me, a small, knowing smile on her face. "Arthur was a wise man, Eleanor," she whispered. "He knew how to protect his family." I felt a surge of gratitude for my late husband. Even from beyond the grave, he was looking out for me, for our grandchildren. It wasn't about the money for me, never had been. It was about the principle, about the right to love and be loved by my family. But for Mark, it was clearly a game changer. When they returned, Mark's demeanor was entirely different. The bluster was gone, replaced by a forced politeness, a thinly veiled desperation. He cleared his throat. "Eleanor," he began, his voice surprisingly subdued, "perhaps we were hasty in our assessment. We understand your desire to be involved in Lily and Tom's lives." Sarah, looking relieved but still wary, added, "Mom, we just want what's best for the kids." Her voice was softer, more like the daughter I knew. The shift was almost comical, if it weren't for the years of pain that had led to this moment. The mediator, sensing the opening, quickly guided the conversation towards a concrete agreement. We negotiated a visitation schedule, regular visits, holidays, and even a weekly video call. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. It was a bridge, however fragile, back to my grandchildren. The agreement was formalized, signed by all parties. As we left the mediation room, the tension had dissipated, replaced by a fragile truce. Mark offered a stiff, awkward handshake. Sarah, however, hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged me. It was a tentative embrace, but it was a hug nonetheless. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I really am." That apology, small as it was, meant more to me than any legal victory. It was a crack in the wall she had built, a sign that the daughter I loved was still there, beneath the layers of Mark's influence and her own fear. The first visit with Lily and Tom was a joyous, tearful reunion. Lily, now a little older, ran into my arms, her small hands clutching my dress. Tom, ever boisterous, tackled me with a hug that nearly knocked me over. Their laughter filled my house once more, a symphony of pure, unadulterated joy. It was as if no time had passed, as if the pain of the past few months had never existed. We baked cookies, read stories, and played in the backyard, rediscovering the simple pleasures of being a family. My relationship with Sarah slowly began to mend. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but a gradual process of rebuilding trust, one conversation, one shared moment at a time. We talked, truly talked, about the pain, the misunderstandings, the influence Mark had exerted. She admitted her fear, her feeling of being caught between her husband and her mother. I listened, offered forgiveness, and focused on the future. Mark remained distant, his interactions with me polite but minimal. The trust fund clause ensured my access to Lily and Tom, but it didn't magically transform his character. He respected the agreement, however, and that was enough. My focus was on my grandchildren, on Sarah, and on healing the wounds that had festered for so long. The journey had been arduous, filled with heartache and difficult choices, but standing firm, fighting for what was right, had ultimately led me back to the most precious people in my life. It was a testament to the enduring power of family, the strength of a grandmother's love, and the quiet wisdom of a husband who had planned for every eventuality. My world, once shattered, was slowly, painstakingly piecing itself back together, stronger and more resilient than before. I had lost a battle, but I had won the war for my family.